Welcome to All Things Right. I'm your host, Hugh. Make sure to subscribe and punch that bell notification so you can get the notification of my shows when I post new shows. And follow me on Twitter at Hugh Jasso, the number 2. That's going to be Twitter, Hugh Jasso, the number 2. As I mentioned in other episodes, I'm not going to show my face. I'm going to prefer to stay anonymous. However, from time to time, I am going to show products that I enjoy and that are patriotic, because I am first and foremost a patriot. And what I have today is Rolling Thunder Cigars 50 cal. Very tasty cigar for all you cigar aficionados. But one of the main things about that company is they are actually owned by a bunch of veterans. To my understanding, I believe part of the proceeds do go help veterans as well. I'll have to check in on that, but that was to my understanding. I don't know, I could be wrong on that. Anyway, I do know that the owners are veterans, and I do know that the cigars are very good. I personally smoke them, and they are very tasty. So try one now. Rolling Thunder 50 cal. Today's topic is going to be El Paso and the Wall, and how El Paso obviously ties in very, very nicely to what is going on right now nationally with our president. And by the way, isn't it great that President Trump was, yes, exonerated yesterday from no collusion and no obstruction charges, which is great. So obviously that exposes a lot of people, and that exposes a lot of things in the mere fact that he was exonerated by the Mueller probe. And the Attorney General Barr actually went on to say that he is not going to pursue any obstruction charges any further, which is fantastic. That's great. So that is an awesome, excellent thing. A historic thing, mind you, because that whole Mueller probe took 2 years. 2 years of wasted time, 2 years of wasted money. Anyway, back to El Paso and the Wall. Main thing, our main concern with El Paso and the Wall is obviously you have a military base over there. So even more so are we going to need to protect El Paso from any foreign invaders. And as I mentioned in my other videos, I had personal experience back in the 90s as to the lack of physical protection over at the border when I was assigned to a Border Patrol agent back in the 90s as part of Project Quarterback. And I saw firsthand that there was no, in some places, there were no physical barriers in terms of border, which was scary. And that is exactly why, at that point in time, the El Paso County Sheriff's Office detailed deputies to assist and augment, even though we ourselves were depleted, but to assist and augment the law enforcement forces along the wall. Oh, not rather wall, but the border. And so when you have morons like Bozo O'Rourke, or Robert O'Rourke rather, talking about how he would break down the wall that already exists, and how the El Paso County Sheriff says that the city was safe when the wall, before the wall, well, rather there is no need for the wall because El Paso is safe. Well, if we did our math and if we did our research correctly, Dan Bongino, who I listen to and who's somebody I admire very much, he actually brought up a very valid point that the same numbers that were used by the Democrats to prove that El Paso was a safe city were from a poll or a census rather used by back in a time when it showed a drop in illegal entry and a drop in crime and a drop in violence and so forth and illegal activity in El Paso once a project that was called Project Towed the Line, which was an actual building of a physical structure over in El Paso. And that, at that point in time, actually brought the crime down substantially in El Paso. And I'm glad Dan Bongino pointed that out. That's something that the Democrats and the left failed to actually see, or not actually see. They just blatantly ignored that, and they ignored it because they're trying to prove their point. Now, this whole ignoring or not wanting a wall is asinine, in my opinion, especially if you live in El Paso. If you live in El Paso and you don't want the wall, you don't want the wall for one thing only, and the only reason you don't want the wall is because you're involved in something that is criminal, period. You know, period, if you don't want the wall. If you live in El Paso, which I did for well over 30 years of my life because I was born and raised in El Paso, no longer live there, as I mentioned, you are not wanting the wall because you are involved in something criminal. You're either wanting to keep the situation lax as it is, because it is, or you're wanting to further keep your criminal situation going. Okay, so that's the only reason. And I'm not, when I say criminal situation, I'm not necessarily talking about drug dealers or so forth, because a lot of times what I'm talking about are people that are in the United States illegally, DACA recipients, or people that are just here illegally and are not known to the federal government that they are here undocumented. That's what I'm talking about. And those are the people that obviously need to be looked into, because my uncle, who lived in California, now he himself, he no longer lives in California. He just moved out of California not too long ago. He lived next to a gentleman who was there illegally, and he was that gentleman actually was receiving government aid, and was not a citizen, receiving government aid, as well as working for cash off the books, doing mowing lawns and lawn care and landscaping type things, and he was getting paid cash. So he was getting paid double. He was getting paid through government aid as well as through funds, through his own cash, which he didn't have to report because he was getting paid cash. And he didn't report that, so he didn't pay taxes, and he was getting paid through taxpayers' money, through assistance by the United States government. And he was able to move out of that neighborhood quickly. When my uncle is a retired mail carrier. My uncle worked for the federal government as a mail carrier, and taxpayer, hardworking United States citizen, and he was not able to move out of that neighborhood in California. But this man was. not a citizen, getting paid government tax money, and was able to move out of that neighborhood because he was able to do landscaping, charge cash, and not pay tax. Well, anyway, going back to El Paso, it's very important that we pay special attention to the fact that these politicians, specifically, especially in El Paso, don't want that wall there. As I mentioned before, you have Bozo O'Rourke wanting to break down the walls. Well, he's known to be very closely tied to the sheriff of El Paso. And as I mentioned, I'm going to call him Sheriff Slick Willie. You do your research as to who that man is. Now, Sheriff Slick Willie, as I mentioned many times before, is involved in, pedophilia, and he engages in sex with underage boys across the border, as well as on the American side. And he's also, it's also said that he's gone to Panama. Now, that's been told to us by several sources in our federal government. Now, why he hasn't been touched as of yet, that is why I am coming to you now. That's why I'm coming to you here. I'm trying to, now that POTUS is cracking down on these kind of things, that's why I'm coming to you people. You people need to know. You people need to know how important this is, because in keeping a place, a city like El Paso lax in terms of immigration, in terms of law enforcement, in terms of the national security, that is detrimental to the rest of the nation, to the rest of the United States, because that, after all, is a border city. A port of entry is what it is. And you, as I mentioned before, you have Fort Bliss. That is an army base. Okay, that is a prime target for a terrorist organization to start with their baloney, start with their shenanigans, and it's also known that there are bases, airplane bases, not too far within the county of El Paso that teach and that have taught plenty of these terrorist people how to fly and all that kind of stuff. And these airplane bases are located in Tornillo, Tornillo, Texas, which is a county of which is within the county of El Paso. It is a municipality of El Paso. Tornillo, Texas. Look that place up. And airplane bases. We used to see all the time working in the jail, plenty of people that were there of Middle Eastern descent, plenty of people that were there that had converted to Islam. And that's a very scary thing. It's not just drugs, okay? It's everything. It's everything. It's drugs. It's human trafficking, and I'll get into the human trafficking here in just a little bit, because that's gonna play into a major part of this show. But it's not just the drugs, because it's the weapons, it's the human trafficking. And it's not just the human trafficking in terms of bringing people over here that are illegal, that want to come here legally and make a life. No, this is a human trafficking to where people are enslaved, in essence, because they are forced by the cartel to pay off an outrageous debt. And this also has to do with selling of body parts. Yes, body parts. They will kill people and they will sell their body parts. I've seen it. And this is a fact. This is something that happens. This is something that goes on. Okay, not only that, but they will smuggle anything in Mexico. If you have money, you will have anything and everything you want. Mexico, unfortunately, beautiful country, beautiful city, is a cartel-run country. It is an outlaw-run nation, and it has been one since the times of Pancho Villa, perhaps before. And that is the truth of it. That is the truth of it. Why do you think they're all coming over here? They're all coming over here for a reason. Period. They're all coming over here for a reason. And I have seen this. I have seen all of examples of all of these crimes happening. And I bring this up to you. And I bring this up because this I get worked up, because I get very passionate about how somebody like Sheriff Slick Willie is in his position of power. I get worked up because when I was a law enforcement officer and I saw these things happening, nothing was able to be done. Not just with Slick Willie, but with the smugglers and the extreme nefarious things, the extreme dangerous things that these people were doing, smuggling of terrorists, smuggling of drugs, weapons. And I'm not just talking about handguns, I'm talking 50 cal. Okay, back and forth. You could easily in El Paso kill somebody in El Paso and have that gun cross the border and nobody will know where it's at. It's easily done. And as well as body parts. Body parts, it's a rumor and it's a joke. It's an ongoing joke that in Mexico, don't fall asleep because you'll lose a kidney. Well, there's a lot of truth to that. There's a lot of truth to that because body parts are bought and sold. They are bought and sold. I saw it. I saw it. We have to pay attention. Bozo O'Rourke wants to tear down these walls. Why? He's running for president after he said many times that he wasn't going to. All of a sudden now he wants to run for president. And as I said before, he is closely tied to Sheriff Slick Willie and Sheriff Slick Willie's minions. Why? Why? Very dangerous. Very important. Do your research, people. Don't take my word for it. All things right. Rolling Thunder Cigars. Check them out. Thank you. Hope you enjoyed.